What's up, everyone? How's it going? Hope you're having a great morning, evening, or afternoon. Today's going to be an exciting show. I know most of us say that all the time, but like I really am excited because I'm a big fan of MongoDB. But before we get into that, I want to go ahead and get things kicked off with our Throwback TikTok Thursday segment. All right, producer, is that coming up?
GitHub Copilot is great for things like generating repetitive code, and that's true for data science too. So to start, I wrote my import pandas statement, and it's already suggesting that I read in a CSV file. And I'm going to replace the file name that Copilot generated with the file I want to work with. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is to ask Copilot to clean the data. So when I do that, we can see that Copilot automatically generates common code to clean the data. And even recommended I drop some of the columns I don't need, so I'm going to drop a couple columns that aren't relevant. Next, I want to reduce the memory usage of the data frame. So first, I'm going to print out the info so we have a baseline. Now, one of the easiest ways to save memory is to not use object types for columns, and you can see that this data frame currently has a lot of those. So I'm going to tell Copilot to reduce the memory usage of the data. And it does generate code to convert some of these object types to category data types. So if we run that info code again, we can see that the memory usage dropped to about 25% of what it was. And this is just the start of how Copilot can really speed up your common data science tasks.
Nice. A great short there for the data science fans. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I need to like experiment with that because that's like such a huge thing. Like 10 years ago, I hardly ever heard about data science. But for our show today, by the way, I want to say hello to Mark Miranda. Cheers to you too. Also, hey, what's up, Code Stack R? What does the R stand for? I feel like you threw that R in as if it means something. So drop that in the comments to see what that R stands for. And also Ariana Safi. Hello. I hope you guys are all excited. This is going to be a great one. Okay. So our guest today is going to be Jesse Hall. He is a senior developer advocate at MongoDB. And he comes with over 20 years of experience. So he's got some wise stuff he's going to share with us today regarding Mongo. So let's go ahead and jump in and bring him on, okay? Jesse, whoops, your mic's off. I think you might be muted.
Okay.
There we go.
Rookie mistake. Sorry about that.
No problem. I'm glad it was you and not me that just was going deaf. I had like an earache the other day, and I was just like,
yeah.
No. I hope I'm
Sorry
not
about
going
that.
deaf. I go extreme like that.
So that's me. Code Stacker. Funny story. When I went to make up my handle, I wanted the ER, but it was already taken. The .com was already taken. So I just dropped the E and made a Code Stacker.
Oh yeah, that's right. Like, hey guys, I'll give you a little insight. Right before the show, I asked him, hey, like, what do you want in your intro? And that was actually one of the bullet points I put because he said, oh, they might know me as Code Stacker. And I put that, and I skipped that bullet point. I went straight to the 20 years, and here I am, like saying, hey, Code Stacker, let me know what the
That's all
Code
good.
Stacker's like right there.
It's me.
That's him.
That's funny. That's funny.
We should make this like a 3-dimensional like show, and actually you drop in your comments while you're on the show, and then
Yes.
give yourself comments to it.
Yeah. I'll ask you questions in the comments. Yeah.
All right. So what are you here to show us, Jesse?
Yeah. So we have this really great VS Code extension for MongoDB, and I wanted to show it off because it's been in the works for a couple of years. It's been in preview, and it is now generally available. The features are all stable, and about 2 weeks ago, we announced that it's generally available. So it's out of preview and it's good to go. You can use it, and we want to get everyone's feedback on it, and I want to show you what we can do with it.
Nice. All right. Yeah, let's just jump right in. What's the official name of the extension?
MongoDB for VS Code. So I'll go ahead. Let me open it up here. And so this is it, MongoDB for VS Code. Okay. Version 1.01 is current, and we have we're approaching 1 million downloads already. So
Wow.
if you haven't tried it yet, go install it, give it a try, and we're going to go through exactly what it can do today.
Cool. All right. Yeah, let's go ahead and do it.
Yeah. So what I want to do is, after you've installed it, you're going
Hmm.
to have this new MongoDB leaf on the side, and we can now add a connection. Now, the cool thing about this is you can, well, let me ask the audience real quick, like what have you used a document database before? Like what databases do you like? Let's hear what the audience has to say about that. But with this, we can connect to a locally hosted MongoDB instance, a self-hosted MongoDB instance, a MongoDB Atlas Cloud instance, a Azure Cosmos DB instance, all these different document databases we can connect to.
Okay,
So,
so before you move further, why don't we tell? Because I'm sure there's going to be some people out there that's just familiar with SQL, like relational
yes,
database. Why don't you tell them
yes.
the difference right quick?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So most people in school or boot camp or whatever you go to, you're going to be taught relational databases, SQL. And a NoSQL database. I really don't like the term NoSQL. And also the term relational and non-relational is very confusing because it makes people think that you can't have relationships in
Hmm.
a non-relational database. So kind of throw those out the door. It's a document database. It stores data differently than a tabular database like SQL. And
Okay.
so the main difference is how you model your data. Um, our mantra at MongoDB is data that is accessed together should be stored together. So in a SQL database, there's really only one way to model your data. You're going to normalize your data. You're going to create your tables and your keys, and you're going to do your lookups and whatnot, right? In
Hmm.
a document database, you really want to start with how is your data going to be accessed from the application, and understand the data that is going to be like when the website it first comes up, what data do you need right then? And that data is what should be stored together and in a collection, in a document.
Hmm.
Any other secondary data that you might need from time to time, here and there, you can store that in another collection and do a lookup. Is That's like a join in a SQL database, but in MongoDB it's called a lookup.
Okay.
And so it's so much quicker when you model your data appropriately. Um,
Yeah, like as you're explaining some of the things, if there's the same way you just compared it to a lookup, if you could do that, that's going to help. Especially like people like me. I haven't used Mongo much, so if you like say, "Oh, it's just like this in SQL," that would be great.
yeah,
Quick question, like regarding, okay, we got all these Mongo lovers there. I love
awesome.
MongoDB so much. Oh my God,
Yeah, nice to
from
have you.
Noah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Margaret, I love Mango, and learning with Aaron, same thing. The concept of normalization,
Mm.
does that exist with document databases?
Not really. You don't. If you go into a document database with that same normalization mindset, you're going to have a very poor experience. You're going to think that MongoDB is the worst database ever
Okay.
because if you go from having 10 tables in SQL and translate those tables to collections, they're called
Hmm.
tables are the same thing as collections in MongoDB. So if you translate tables equals collections, you're going to have a terrible experience. Like I said, you want to understand how is your data going to be accessed and put that data in the same collection, in the same documents, so that we can just do one lookup or one query and get that data all at once.
All right, cool. So it's a
Yeah,
completely different way of thinking.
completely.
All right.
Yes. Yeah. I like to think like when you're modeling SQL, you're thinking from the back end to the front end. In MongoDB, it's from the front to back. So, yeah.
Nice. Got it.
Awesome. I did see one comment. It asked, "Is this free?" And yes, completely free. Like I said, you can host it locally. There's a free Atlas. You can host it on a free Atlas cluster as well. Also on Cosmos DB. So let me show you. Let me go over to um, my Atlas database. And the first thing that I just need to grab here is my connection string. So I'm going to grab my MongoDB for VS Code connection string.
Hmm.
And then I'm going to go back into MongoDB or into the extension and add a connection. All right, and then we're going to click connect here, and I'm going to paste in that connection string. So in this connection string, it's connecting to my cluster, and I have my username and my password, and I don't care if you see my password, because my cluster is protected by network IP address as well. So you'd have to physically be on my network to access this, even if you had my username and password. And then after the stream, I'll delete it anyway. So
Okay.
So I'm gonna enter that, and then boom, we're connected. So we have our new connection here, and I can expand that and see all of my databases that are in this cluster. Now, I have loaded some sample data on MongoDB, and so we've got a bunch of sample data that we can play around with, like an Airbnb database, geospatial database, Mflix, which is like a Netflix movie database, restaurants. So we're going to use several of these throughout this demonstration.
Okay.
So if I expand one of these databases, we'll see the different collections. Again, these are like tables in a SQL database. So in the Mflix database, we have a movies collection. Within the movies collection, we have almost 24,000 documents. And go ahead.
I was going to say, for the chat, let us know if you could see his connections easily. Otherwise, maybe we could just do a Control Plus.
Oh yeah, should I zoom in again?
Yeah.
I can do that better.
Yeah, try one more time. I feel like for me, it's still a little hard. Yeah, that's good.
Cool. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, continue.
All right. So we've got our movies collection. We've got our documents. If I expand into the documents, you can actually see a subset of those documents. Not all 24,000 are pulled in, but it brings in a subset. And I can actually open up one of these documents and see what's in it. And so this is how data is stored in a document database. It's just like a JSON document.
Yeah, I see that. Cool. Okay.
Yes. So we've got our ID, we've got our plot here, our genres, runtime, cast, title, etc. All that stuff is here in the document. And I could actually go in here and edit this. I could add whatever I wanted to this document and save it. And that actually saved it back to the database.
Wow. Okay. Like on the fly. You know what? We need some background music for this. That's editing. So, chat, let me know if the music is too loud. Okay. By the way, so this is just on the fly as you edit it. You don't even need to like prompt it to save. As you're editing it, it just updates the database.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. I just hit Control S and saved it. You're probably not going to want to do that very often, but that is the thing. You can do it. So if I go back in here, the other cool thing is as you're writing queries, it's really cool to know what fields you have available to query on, right? You can open up a document and see what fields are there, like we just did, or you can go here to the schema and you can see all of the fields that are available in this collection. Okay. So now you can easily see what fields am I trying to query, and we can see the different types of fields. So we have, for instance, a text field or a string field. We have an array. So we have an array within here, an array of strings for the cast. And then we have an object. So you can embed objects within objects. It's like documents within documents, basically. And this is how you primarily want to store relational data in a document database. So this is a relationship. Normally you would have awards in a separate table in SQL, and then you'd have to do a join to grab everything. But in a document database, you store it all embedded in the same document if it's needed. Now, a document can become bloated. It can become too big. You don't always want to store everything. Again, whatever data you're going to be accessing together, instead of doing those separate lookups, embed them. So within awards, we've got nominations, texts, wins. We've got an IMDb here. Within that, we have an ID, ratings, and votes. So we can easily see the schema of this collection. And this schema is inferred from a subset of documents. And so schemas in a document database are not the same as schemas in SQL again. So in SQL, you use a schema to strictly define what your structure is going to be, right? In MongoDB, schemas are very flexible. You can make it strict like that, but by default, it's not. And so really, this is more of this is what's there, but not necessarily every document has every field. If that makes sense.
So you mentioned that it could possibly get bloated. How would one know that? Like when you're actually like running your app and data's slow to come back, or is there another way?
Yeah, for sure. So when your queries are getting slow, the main thing, again, it comes back to your data modeling. And so if you have a bunch of data in this document, let's say that we never query countries, we never query whatever else might be in here, several fields in here that we never query. So instead of having that in this document, you separate that into another collection. If you ever need it, then do a lookup. That's fine.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. The idea is to one shot, just query it one time, get all the data that you need without doing any joins or lookups or anything like that. Just grab the data you need. And it's very quick.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing that's really cool in here, and we'll go through this a little bit in more depth later, indexes. So as you're writing a query, you want to know, is there an index on this field that I'm querying? And so if we expand this down, we can see the indexes that are on this collection. And we can see there's an index on the cast, full plot, genres, and title. So if we did a query on title, it's going to be fast because there's an index on it already. But if I was doing a query on some other field, then I'd want to add a new index. And the cool thing is you can actually add an index right here from inside VS Code without ever leaving VS Code. And I'll show you that in a bit.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the high level of the main like tree structure that you see here.
Mm-hmm.
But the other, like the main thing about this extension is the playgrounds. So I'm going to start up a new playground, and this text is huge. All right.
Yeah.
So
now that we've gotten away from like the tree, yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'll just bump it down one time. All right. Just
right.
let us know, chat, if it's too small. All right. So this is a playground, and it starts out with this template in here with tons of comments letting you know exactly what we can do here. So this uses it's called MongoDB shell, and it is a way to query the database. And if you look up here at the top, this is just a file, and it's actually a JavaScript file. And so what this is going to do is allow us to query and act upon our database in real time from inside VS Code. We can write whatever we want right here and run it.
You're referring to, oh, okay, I see. I thought you were referring to the reference in line 13. You're talking about, I see it right now at the very top, mongodb.js.
Yeah.
The whole thing that we're looking at is the file.
Yeah, the file up here. If I were to save that, it's unsaved right now, but playground-1.mongodb.js. So this is actually a JavaScript file.
Okay.
And all of this actually runs in Node.js in the background.
Cool.
So what we're going to do here is we're going to select the database that we want to use. So we're going to say use MongoDB VS Code Playground DB. Now, if I go back over to my databases, you can see here that there is no MongoDB VS Code Playground DB in my current databases. So what's going to happen is when we run this, it's actually going to create that database for me.
Okay.
And then what we're going to do, the next line, 16, we're going to say DB and then get collection. So we're going to get a collection called sales, which since we don't have the database, we know we don't have the collection either. So it's going to create this collection for us. And then it's going to insert mini, and we're going to insert some dummy data, which is some dummy sales data with some pricing, the date of the sale, etc.
All right.
After we insert the data, we're going to get this, run this find, which is going to get the sales on April 14th or April 4th. So we're going to get the collection sales again. We're going to find, we're going to look for dates greater than 4414 and less than 4514. And then we're going to count those.
All right. And then after that, we
console
print it
log.
out.
Yeah. So we're going to console log that. So we're going to do, so we're creating a database. We're creating a collection. We're inserting a bunch of dummy data. We're counting how many sales happened on a certain date, and we're console logging that. And then one last thing we're going to do is we're going to run an aggregation. So an aggregation is a way to, it's called an aggregation pipeline. It's a way to manipulate data and run queries one after the other. So what we're going to do is we have two stages in this aggregation. The first stage is a match. So in this stage, we're looking for all of the sales that occurred in 2014. So greater than and less than these certain dates. The second stage is we're going to group whatever this first stage returned to us, we're going to group those by the item. So we want to know what were all the sales, and then tell me what were the sales for each item.
Okay.
So we're going to see two different things. We're going to see a console log, and we're going to see the results of this aggregation. So in order to run this, there's a play button in the top right up here. So I'm going to click the play button, and it's going to prompt, are you sure? Because this is actually going to run on our real database. Are you sure you want to run this? So I'm going to say yes. It's going to run the playground, and it's going to give us our results. So right here in our output, we see our console log. 2 sales occurred. And then in our playground, I'm just going to bring this down a bit. Our playground result is up here, and this is the result of the aggregation. So XYZ had a sales amount of 150, JKL 20, etc. That's the results of the aggregation. So I was able to do all of that. And if I go back over to, let me just close a few of these. I go back over to MongoDB, and I refresh this. We now see that new database.
Okay.
We see that sales collection. We see the 8 documents that it inserted.
So now, when you were showing the file, and you were showing like the aggregation, am I wrong to think of it as a stored procedure, which is, the collection of commands, or is that on the right path?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can definitely look at it in that way.
But you don't normally use, in the world of MongoDB, you don't really use that term, right? Or
no, not specifically. No, not specifically. Okay. But it's along the same lines. Yeah. So you're basically just running this to act upon the data and return some calculation or some result or some filtered query or whatever that might be.
Okay.
You could also use this to enrich. Let's say you've got data from one database, another database, and you want to like combine them into a third database with some calculations and whatnot.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is when you first open up a playground, everyone's gonna see this template. This is like just the main template to kind of get you started, help you understand how it works and what's going on. And so, just looking over at the chat real quick, were there any questions on any of that, or
I was just going to mention. So I was going to mention, learning with Aaron says aggregation confuses me a lot sometimes. So, learning with Aaron, maybe if you could drop like what parts of it confuse you, and Jesse could enlighten you with his wisdom. Coder says it would be amazing if it had the collection without the database. It would become the co-pilot for databases. Okay,
not sure exactly what that refers or means, but awesome. So the aggregation, just again quickly, is just understanding that this is, we see the square brackets here. So this is an array of queries that we want to happen on the database. And in this array, the first thing in our pipeline is going to be our match. In this case, it can be whatever. There's many different operators that we can use. In this instance, we're using a dollar match. But just understanding that it goes in sequence. So the first thing in the pipeline is going to execute, and then whatever this returns is going to be sent to the second stage of the pipeline. And
so
be many.
Sorry, so wait, before you move on, regarding date, Codner just said that when using MongoDB, I had a massive issue with the date time format. It kept changing the date to other time zones. Do you know how he could address that?
Yeah, so it could possibly be, I would say, on the application level, because the database itself is not going to change the date. It's whatever date you send it is what it's going to store and what it will send back to you. So you might just double check on the back end when it's sending the date that it's sending is it sending the local user's date, or is the server changing the date before it saves it? but MongoDB itself wouldn't change the date. So for sure, check the logic in the code there.
Okay. So you heard him. Don't blame it on MongoDB.
No, it's all good.
Blame it on the logics.
There
All right.
you go.
Sorry to
All
interrupt,
right, cool.
but yeah,
No,
go
no.
ahead, continue.
No, we're all good. So that was the basic example. I'm gonna just take this file and clear it, and let's get rid of this result here. So I just deleted everything from this playground file, and we're gonna kind of start from scratch. And so this time, let's use a different database. So we're gonna say use, and then I'm gonna use the sample restaurants database, and then we are going to just do a quick find. So let's say db dot, and then I'm gonna start typing find, and then actually, sorry, db dot, we're gonna use in the restaurants collection is I think it's restaurants. Yeah. So we see the IntelliSense here giving us suggestions. It knows restaurants is a valid collection. And then on the restaurants collection, we're going to find, and we can see we can do a find a modify, find one. Let's actually do a find one. And we can also see the extra info here that the extension is giving us. That the find one, we need a query, we can add a projection. And if we want to go to the MongoDB docs, we can click read more, and that will take us directly to the MongoDB documentation.
Okay.
So pretty helpful there in the hints there.
Nice.
Sorry, good.
By the way, question from me: have you experimented with Copilot using this extension?
Yeah. So I actually have Copilot disabled right now, just because I don't want it to just
interrupt your show,
do all of the typing for me. But
it's
yes,
hey, how about we do this? Hey, come on, man! Am I upstaging you?
exactly. So Copilot does an amazing job. It would do all of this for me, no problem. I just wanted to highlight the extensions, hints and IntelliSense and whatnot as well. Okay. So even if you have Copilot, it's great. If you don't have Copilot, it's still great. So
Noah wants to ask some modeling questions, or he wants to know if we could ask modeling questions.
Sure. Yeah, I'd say ask away, and we'll see if we have time to get to more questions after a couple more things here. Yeah.
Sure, but yeah, go ahead, continue.
All right, so we're just gonna do again, this is just very simple. We're gonna use the sample restaurants collection, grab the restaurants collection and do a find one. So we're gonna run this and see what happens. So find one, it's just going to give us the first document that it finds. And so now we can see this, here's the results. It gave us this restaurant that's in Brooklyn. The cuisine is hamburgers. It's Wendy's. That's funny. So that's just like a very, very simple, but what the cool thing in here is in the address, we have coordinates. And what we could do is do a geolocation and find all of the restaurants that are near a specific location. So let's do that. Let's go back here, and instead of this find one, I'm gonna just paste in a location here. So this is the MongoDB New York office coordinates. All right, and then what we can do is we'll say DB restaurants, and then we're going to do an aggregation. So aggregate, and then in here, again, an aggregation is an array of things that we want to do. So in our first stage, we're going to do a geoneer. We're going to use the geoneer operator. And before again, Copilot is not turned on. So you can see all of the suggestion that's popping up here. I'm just going to hit tab. And now we have our geoneer with all of its available options popped up here. And so, go ahead.
Yeah, so by default that so that gives I wonder how that, are there conflicts then, like when Copilot is on and this happens also, and it gives its own suggestions? You know what I mean?
No.
Like how would...
Yeah. So it really it's on your VS Code settings. You can actually tell it to let the extension give you the settings or the autocomplete on before Copilot or not. So if I were to maybe type a comment that says, write me a geo-near aggregation, then Copilot would go ahead and do that. But if I'm doing, if I'm typing out $geo-near, then the extension actually pops this up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now this is a snippet. That's all it is. It's a snippet, and I can actually tab through this. So first thing, it's asking us for the coordinate numbers. I'm going to skip past those. I'm going to come back to that. So distance field, we're going to set that to, this is just what you want to call the field in your collection. I'm going to call it distance. Be very unique there. And then the max distance, let's just say 100 is going to be the max distance. And then spherical, I'm going to set that to true. Now these other options, again, the snippet just gave us all of the available options, but I don't need all of these. So I'm going to delete the ones that I don't need. And then the near, see, this is points and coordinates. This is going to be our MongoDB New York constant that we created right up here. All right, so what this is going to do, it's going to use our $geo-near operator to find anything within 100. I'm going to, you know what? This just popped into my head. I'm not sure if that's 100 feet or 100 miles. But it's going to find something in a spherical range from the MongoDB New York office and give us all of the restaurants within that range. But remember, we talked about indexes. Before you run a query on something, you want to make sure that there's an index to make sure that that query is going to be performant. So let's go back over here and let's look at our restaurants and see what indexes there are. So there are no indexes on this restaurants collection. So this isn't going to work very well. So let's go ahead and add an index before we run that aggregation. So I hit the plus button here, and this popped up another playground. This playground, though, is customized to this specific collection so that we can create an index on it. So you can see that it has already filled out which database we want to use, which collection we want to use, and that we want to create an index. And now in the comments, we can see there's different types of indexes we can create: a normal index, a wildcard index, text index, geospatial, hashed, and then there's tons of other options here. So what we want is a geospatial index. So I'm just going to use this comment here. I'm going to add it up here. Now we have to specify what is the location field. So if we go back over to our schema under restaurants, we can see, remember we had address and then coord. And so that is the field that we want to index on. So address coord. So I'm going to add that right here. Address.coord. So we're going to create this index now. This is all set up for us. And it's going to be a 2D sphere. So I'm going to hit play on this. And again, yes, I want to actually do that. And there we go. We have our index is now created. So I can close this and we can verify that. We can go back over here to our collection indexes. Let's refresh. And we can now see our index for this aggregation. It's now going to be more performant. It's going to work now that we have a geo-near index.
Nice. All right.
So go ahead. Question?
I was just from the chat. Choa asked, what's the most efficient way to add new fields or update an already existing database schema from new fields with new fields?
For sure. So again, going from SQL to a document database is a completely different mindset. So in SQL, you have to make sure you update your schema, you do migrations, right? It's like, it's a whole thing. It's really hard. In MongoDB, you just add the field. If the field's not there, it'll just get added. Now, the thing is, you have to understand that not all documents in that collection will have the same fields. So you have to understand that. So a great way to manage it is by adding a version, like a schema version to each document. And so in your application, when you're querying something, you could check that version, and then you'll know whether it's going to have a certain field or not. And that's again, a different mindset. Many people probably may not like that, but it's actually called polymorphism. And that means that you can actually have different data structures in the same table or the same collection. And so it's just a matter of managing it. Again, MongoDB is very flexible. If you want to just add that field, you can just add that field. If you want MongoDB to be as strict as SQL, you can do that too. You can add schemas to make it strict like that as well if you want to. So it's very flexible.
Cool. Noah came in with his modeling question. Users are creating a lot of widget objects associated with them. Would they store on the user's doc or in a widget collection with each doc holding the creator's object ID?
I'm not really sure what widget is referring to, but you can.
I think that's just like a generic term,
Yeah. For sure, you can do like a foreign key type thing where you can do a lookup between different collections. You can do that. Again, it goes back to how is the application going to access that data? Are you going to access both of those collections every single time that website loads or that application loads? If so, you probably don't want to do that lookup. You'd rather have those stored together. So maybe you take those two different collections and you make a third collection that is a combination of just the data that you need, and then you pull from that one.
Cool. Right after that, Kade says, when you think of MongoDB from a pipeline and a data stream angle, it's fairly manageable. When I've recently began using MongoDB when going serverless on AWS. I have to figure out when a sentence ends. No one wants to use periods. Come on, throw in a period in there somewhere, folks. Just
a couple extra spaces at least.
I'm not even asking for semicolons. All right, we don't need to get fancy. I got to figure out when a thought ends and begins. Another one.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. So I think that's a great comment. Yes, it's a change in mindset. If you're coming into this with a SQL mindset, you really have to just throw all that out and just understand that a document database is not. It's the complete opposite of a SQL database.
All right.
But when it's set up and modeled correctly, it's super fast. So, all right, let me just go ahead and run this. So now that we created our index, we're going to run this geo-near aggregation, and we're going to see. Let's just see what happens. Let's run this. So now we have our results here. We have returned an array of restaurants, and all of these restaurants are within the distance that we specified to the MongoDB office. So this one is Circle in the Square Theater. We have our next one here is some cafeteria and so on, right? So we got a whole bunch of restaurants that we can now choose from if we're hungry for lunch, right? Unfortunately, we're not in New York, so.
Cool. Everybody, by the way, hit that like button if you're getting a value out of this, if you're having like a good time. Richard Gower asks, any good resources to go from a relational mindset to a NoSQL mindset?
Yeah, so MongoDB does have a YouTube channel as well, and so tons of resources there, as well as the MongoDB mongodb.com/developers. We have tons of articles there to help you kind of understand. And there's this thing called Relational Migrator that you're going to be hearing more about.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So actually it's on the 22nd of this month. It's .local NYC. It's a conference that we'll be holding in New York, MongoDB specific conference, and we're going to be demoing the Relational Migrator there. And so what it does is it takes your current relational database, and it sees all the tables and everything, and it converts it. And it gives you suggestions on how you should convert it and how you should model it in a document database.
That sounds cool. Now, I would think, now again, I haven't messed with Mongo, so I wouldn't know because I haven't tried, but I would have thought that would have been something that would have already existed a while back. So this is new. There hasn't been any type of, like, how have developers did the conversion then without this to go from SQL to a document database, like just from scratch?
Trial and error. and one off just like what is your use case, because honestly every application, every use case is it might fit to a certain mold. Like there's several different models that you could fit into, but there's going to be some tweaks and some customizations. So there is definitely resources available, but there has never been a tool that does most of the work for you. Like it's going to get you like 95% there. You're still going to have to make some tweaks here and there, but there's never been a tool so far that I know of that has done that.
Well, I imagine that this is going to be a very popular tool.
Nice. Awesome. So, were there any other questions, or I can move on to, I have one last thing I wanted to show.
Bashir has one. He says, I'm not sure if it was already answered, but when should I index a field? If it improves performance, shouldn't it then just always be added, or have I misunderstood something?
Yeah, so you want to avoid having too many indexes, because too many indexes will cost more, perform or CPU usage and whatnot on your database, and you're going to run out of storage because if you have too many indexes. But so when you create a collection, you're going to by default have an index on the ID field. You always need an index on the ID field, right? But if you're going to be doing a search, for instance, on a title or a name field or something like that, you want to add an index to that. And that's going to make those searches and those queries much more performant. So indexes are not default. So you do need to add them. You need to understand like what fields are you querying the most and add indexes to those.
Okay. There you go, Bashir.
Awesome.
Yeah, I guess we could continue moving on. I don't see any other questions right now.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to close that out. And then I have a file here that I have prepared. And what I wanted to show one more thing is, again, these are just JavaScript files, and this is running Node.js in the backend. And so what that means is you can actually use NPM packages with these queries in VS Code. And so all of the like integrated packages like FS file system in Node.js, those are all available to you. But we can use any other packages like Axios. Like for instance, I'm using that here. Now there's one small caveat is you do have to have those npm packages installed in your user directory. So on Windows, it's just going to be in my default user directory. On Mac, same thing in your user directory. So I would just do an npm install Axios right here, and then VS Code will actually be able to pull that. The extension will be able to use that through VS Code because it's installed in our user directory.
Nice. Okay. Cool.
So that's what I did. I did in my user directory npm install Axios, and then now I'm able to use Axios here. And so what we're going to do is I want to enrich a database that we have here. We have a sample inflix database, which has a movies collection. And let's take a look at the schema here. So it's got a bunch of movies. It has, the cast, IMDb. We looked at this earlier. There's one thing that it's missing. It doesn't have any images, any posters in the movies collection. So we want to add that. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use a service called OMDB API, Open Movie Database. And so the first thing I have up here is an async function that's going to get the movie poster from a URL that we send it. And we're going to use Axios. And then we're going to return back from the data that we receive a poster.
Okay.
We're using the sample inflix database. For this example, normally we'd want to enrich the entire collection of 24,000 documents. But for this example, I'm going to use an aggregation and just grab 2 documents. Right.
All right.
So I'm going to use an very simple aggregation with one stage that's just going to limit to 2 documents. And then I have an async IFI here that is and that's just because I'm using an await statement inside here. But we're going to loop through these movies. So we're going to say movie of movies. For each movie, we're going to grab the title. Then we're going to construct this URL that's going to query the OMDB API, pass in our title, pass in our API key. This is a free service, by the way, but you do have to have an API key.
Okay, this way we don't have to like scrub through IMDb. We can just do this legitimately.
There you go. Exactly. Yes. And so then we're going to get our movie poster from that function that we defined up above earlier. And then after that, we're going to update our database. So we're going to say db.movies.update1. We're going to find the document that we want, which is going to be where the ID equals the movie ID. And then we're going to set our poster, which again, we talked about adding fields to documents where fields don't exist. We're just going to say poster. We're just going to say that's the field. If it's not there, it's going to create it.
Okay.
And then we're going to add that movie poster URL. Then after that, we're just going to do a console log just so that we know that we updated this movie ID.
All right.
Cool. All right, so let's run that. We'll say yes. And it's going to query OMDB and grab the stuff, I hope. This worked an hour ago.
Well, so like that's a good scenario right now. Like, what points do we know like if something is wrong or we should continue waiting?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm impatient, just like everyone else, I'm sure. I would say, give it a few seconds. If something happens, you will get an error message.
Okay.
And so we got undefined here because I didn't return anything. I only did a console log. So if I were to do another aggregation after this, look something up or whatever, then I would get a result. But I didn't return anything. I just did console log, which we get in our output.
But it's so it didn't break. It still did what you wanted, right?
Exactly. What happened is exactly what I was expecting.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Cool.
So we updated these two documents. And so if we go over here and we look at the movies and then we look in the documents, we can see 4803, 4803. And then just close the sidebar. And then let's see if there is a poster. There's the poster. So nice. let's go ahead and open that up and see what it looks like. Oh, it opened up on my other screen. It's a really old movie. There's the poster for it.
Okay, there we go.
Nice. So that worked, and we're able to again use npm modules, enrich databases, do all of that, and all from inside VS Code. We never left VS Code this entire time.
Nice. Well, that seems like very cool. Is there anything else before? Because we're about to get to the point where we'd like to do our next segment.
Yeah. Just one last thing. This will just take 1 second. So if we go up here to command palette, we can see MongoDB launch MongoDB shell. So this is actually going to launch in our terminal. And others on the stream, they might be used to using the MongoDB shell. This is just a command line version of being able to manipulate the database through command line, right? So what it did, because we're connected through the extension, it actually used our credentials to log into our database. And so now I can do the same thing in here. I can say use sample mflix, and now we're on the sample mflix database. I can say show collections, and we can see all the collections in the database. So cool. That was the last thing I wanted to show. All of that, again, so many tools, everything inside VS Code.
No, that is like totally amazing. It seems like a lot of people are excited about this. Anytime you could just have everything in one environment, that makes life so much easier. So thanks so much for showing that.
No, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. Richard Gower says, let's say I have a tool that is adding and removing fields. Is there a need, and if so, a way, to remove fields from a schema if none of the documents now use that field?
Okay,
Thanks, by the way, for using punctuation, Richard. Big fan.
Awesome. Yeah. So, okay, again, this schema over here is inferred from, like, I didn't define the schema. It's inferred from the existing documents. And so if a field doesn't exist in any of the documents, that's not going to show up in the schema. It's just automatically not going to show up. But if you're talking about the schema, you can actually define a schema at the database level that is going to limit what can and can't be stored. That uses what's called a JSON schema. I don't know if you're referring to that or if you're referring to this. If you're referring to that, you have to update that. If you're referring to this, it will automatically update for you.
Okay. Yeah, I interpreted it as like he just want to like keep a clean database. Like,
Yeah.
is there a way to remove it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if there's like a field that you don't want, like you're not sure if something has that field, but you just want to get rid of it, you could come into here into the playground and run a delete mini where that field exists, and it will just get rid of the field on every document.
Cool. Nice clean house.
Mm-hmm.
A couple more comments here. Dimitri says, in case of a big project with various entities that should be linked with each other, should I store in a table IDs of another tables which are linked to the current one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this comes back to database modeling 101 in a document database. So in MongoDB, tables are referred to as collections, and it unfortunately the answer is it depends. It depends on when this data is going to be accessed and how often it's going to be accessed. If it's going to be accessed often, you want all of those to be in the same table or the same collection. If it's sporadically accessed from time to time, it's okay to do that lookup.
Okay. Next, are you done? I thought for a second you were going to say something else. Okay.
I'm good.
Next one. It's like people save their comments for the last moment. Choa asks, when going to production for, let's say, an MVP, can I use the free plan, or is it advisable to use one of the paid plans, then as a user grows, I upgrade the plan?
For sure. I would, you can definitely start out with the free plan, and you're going to be able to easily see in the dashboard if you're hitting the limits or how fast your application is growing. And as it grows, you can upgrade as needed when needed. There's also a serverless offering where you basically only pay for what you use. So there's different things. You could go with start with the free plan and just go from there.
All right. Dimitri asks, when is it reasonable to use Mongoose on your point? Yeah. From your point of view?
Mongoose is great. And so Mongoose is an object or relational mapper. And so you're able to structure your code a little bit better. And so if you're used to having that schema defined at the application level, then Mongoose is great for that. Another great option, if you like TypeScript and you really want types, then look into Prisma. Prisma also works with MongoDB. So those two are great. I like to use just the regular Node.js driver or whatever language you're working in. There's drivers for, I think, 12, 13, 14. I can't remember how many drivers we have for different languages, but I like to just use the regular driver. But Mongoose is great as well as Prisma.
All right, good. I'm glad you explained what Mongoose was. At first, I thought he just mistyped Mongo. I'm glad I'm jumping to correct him. Excuse me, it's Mongo.
Yep.
And then shame was I realized what really he knew.
Yeah, Mongoose is an actual thing. Yeah, it's good. It's cool.
All right. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. This has been great. It is time for the lightning round. Producer, let's throw that little thing. All right, so the rules of the lightning round segment is just answer the question with the first thing that comes to your mind, no more than 3 seconds, okay? And we have 5 of them. So first one, biggest pet peeve?
Just the thumbs up emoji.
Thumbs up. If you get so you're anti thumbs up, like it's like come up with something else besides that.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's overused, like thumbs up. I can never tell if it's like you're agreeing or you're like I'm agreeing.
It's like, all right, whatever. I bet the 2 thumbs ups is probably really annoying too. Yeah. Hey. Number 2, scariest thing you've ever done for fun.
Fishing in the middle of the night when it's completely dark in a boat, like no lights.
Oh, that is
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
Especially if there's gonna be sharks around.
Yeah. No sharks. There was lots of alligators. I live in the South. Lots of alligators and snakes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, for sure. Number 3, is it GIF or is it GIF?
It is GIF.
I'm team GIF also.
Yes.
Yeah. It's hard. GIF for me sticks with peanut butter, and that's where
Exactly. GIF peanut butter, JIF.
4. What's one VS Code extension you cannot live without? Stuck on an island. One VS Code extension.
The code stacker theme.
The code stacker theme. Okay.
That's the theme I've been using this entire time.
You made that up yourself, that theme?
It's a real thing. It's a real thing, yeah.
Oh, okay. Nice. All right. And number 5, first guest if you had your own talk show. I like this question.
Oh, that's a good one. So if I did a talk show, it would be in the development space. And so one person that has really helped me in learning a lot of things is Brad Traversy. I'd have him on. Yeah.
Yeah. I know him. Oh, I know of him. I've never met him,
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that was the lightning round. Thank so much for that. Let me just address the last thing here on the comment. Well, 2 things. Someone really likes your shirt. They're like, hey, where do I get that shirt? Is that available?
Well, if you're in New York City or one of the other 30 locations that we're going on a world tour to, then you can get a shirt there at the MongoDB.locals.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the conference?
Yeah. So the first one is towards the end of this month, 22nd, in New York City, and then we're going all around. We're going to be in Chicago, Dallas, all over the U.S. We're also going abroad. So just check out mongodb.com/local. I think, can't remember exactly, but you can find a list of where we're going, and if you show up, we'll give you a T-shirt.
Okay, and we'll just to not be dismissive, just ask this last technical question by Joao. What is the best approach for creating an index constraint or create another table with unique IDs?
All right, so the index, we went through how to create an index, and there's several different types of indexes that you can create. So it depends on what you're trying to do. We created a GeoNear index, and so you can also create a search index if you're doing text search, several different things. Those are super easy to create. As far as the unique IDs, MongoDB automatically creates an underscore ID field, and that contains an object ID. I'll show you right here. We call that an object ID. And so, really quick side note, this looks like JSON, but it's actually BSON. And BSON is basically an extended version. It has extra things, extra data types than JSON has. And so this is an object ID that MongoDB automatically adds to every collection that you create.
All right.
For every document.
Cool. This has been awesome. It went just as great as I expected it to. Everybody was really active in the chat there, asking a bunch of technical questions. I feel like I got the most technical questions here than for a long time. Most of the live streams have like non-technical, chit chat, but people are really into it this time. Thanks so much for coming on, Jesse. So with the new fans that you've gotten today, if they want to follow you, where do they go? I know we all know that you're Code Stacker now.
Yep.
Like
Code Stacker everywhere, anywhere, Twitter, YouTube, everywhere, LinkedIn, exactly, just Code Stacker.
Cool.
And appreciate you having me, and please go install the MongoDB for VS Code extension if you haven't already.
Nice. All right, so our producers are putting on the URL for installing MongoDB. And also, folks, we have our TikTok channel. And of course, our YouTube channel since you're already here. Feel free to follow us there at VS Code for TikTok. And then on YouTube, we're Code at Code. And I have been Ronald Adolph, your host. And thanks so much again, Jesse. This has been awesome.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
See
Everyone
you
have a
guys.
great day. Thanks for joining.
Perfect. See you guys later.